Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, new paradigms for a new world where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here 9 times a week, Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., streaming live at all those times at richarddugan.com. We are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, as well as YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. I hope that you will take time to subscribe and click notifications so that when a new conversation is posted, you'll be notified and you'll be able to tune in, listen in, and learn, be entertained and inspired. A reminder that Choices, which is my book, 5 Steps for Life, it's available on Amazon.com in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle with Audible, soon to be released. We also ask that if you can support the work that we are doing financially, we do have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when they ask for an email address to whom you're sending, please go to richard@richarddugan.com. That's the email address. If you go to richarddugan.com, there is also a link directly to PayPal so that you can send us whatever support you can. And we thank you to those who have helped and to those who will help. We also ask that you take time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to that still, small voice. And with that, we now take you to our very special interview and guest here on Tell Me Your Story. And welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and even under the circumstances of which I find myself, and it's okay, it's a good thing, I am so glad to be here talking with you and our very special guest. She's got an interesting story to share with us. Her name is Lori Miller Kase. And Lori, thank you so much for being with us here on the program today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, folks will probably notice a couple of things. If you are watching the YouTube channel, you will notice that my lighting is ever so slightly different. It's because I'm in a new facility. Well, I should say a new home. We're now living up in the mountains, and I don't have everything set up yet, the lighting among other things, but I've got enough coming from the old monitor. And sounding a little different, looking a little different because I'm wearing a headset today. Because, again, I don't have everything set up, but we had these interviews scheduled and I wanted to follow through. And we're going to talk about, among other things, her latest thriller, The Accident. It's set in a seemingly quiet Connecticut town. The story unravels after a popular high school football player is killed in a hit-and-run accident, and follows as a suspenseful whodunit that delivers deep, that delves deep into themes of loyalty, guilt, identity, and the fragile line between right and wrong. Speaking of challenges there, is this your first novel and/or thriller?
This is my first novel and my first thriller. Yes.
And what set you down this particular path to want to write something like this? Because the first thought I come to when I read that headline, if you will, or the little synopsis about hit and run, I'm thinking, well, 21st century. Oh, I bet you it was a driverless car. And I don't want to give anything away, but please share with us a little bit about what led you in this direction.
Okay. Well, I have been a journalist for most of my career, but I've always wanted to write a novel someday. And I worked for many years as a journalist, but I was writing fiction long before I ever became a journalist. I wrote stories from when I was very young, and I put aside fiction writing to start my journalism career at the New York Times, but I eventually, when I turned 40, decided that if I was going to write a novel someday, it was time to get started. So I went to grad school to study creative writing at Wesleyan University, and um, I started writing fiction again. And this story actually, this novel actually began as a short story that I started in a writer's workshop that I was taking with one of my professors from Wesleyan after I graduated, and eventually evolved into a young adult novel.
Mm.
And how I got to this particular story is that around the time that I was writing the novel, the story at first, there was a tragic accident in my town in Connecticut,
Mm.
and a car full of adults, a van full of adults, crashed into a car driven by a teen, and two of the adults died. And though the teen was not at fault, I always felt really sad for this young person that was going to have to forever carry the heavy burden of this trauma, um, and the knowledge that he had been involved in an accident in which two people died. And when I'm trying to think of story ideas, I start asking myself a bunch of what if questions. And in this case, I thought, what if a teen was responsible for a fatal accident? And what if he or she kept driving? And what if someone in their family knew that they were involved? What would they do with that knowledge? Um, I would think that probably they'd be inclined to want to protect their family member, but how could they keep such a secret? So this was my thinking
Mm.
as the story evolved. And in my novel, my 15-year-old protagonist, Hannah, believes that her brother and her boyfriend are behind a fatal hit and run that has shattered her small Connecticut town. And the weight of this secret is really almost impossible for her to bear.
Now, the interesting thing about this particular book is that this book is being released on the day and date that you and I are having this conversation.
Yes.
What was your feeling? What went through you when, and I would guess you did have some print versions that came in the mail and you open it up and it was your book.
It was um, indescribable. I've always wanted to write a novel ever since I was little. I had a journal in my second grade class in which we would write a line to the teacher every day, and she would write a line back to us. So we had this ongoing dialogue with our teacher for the entire school year. And in that journal, which I still have, she asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I said an author. And though I've been a writer my entire life, um, today's the first day I can officially say that I'm an author. So when those books came in the mail, and I opened the box and held my actual published book, it was really, something I always dreamed about. So it was great. It was a happy moment.
I remember when mine arrived, and I only ordered some of the paperback versions. I eventually did order a hardcover version that strangely enough, I carry in my briefcase. Although my briefcase isn't going too many places these days because now I'm going to be working totally from home, which is interesting. But it's so nice to have that in hand. One of my favorite reviews was from my mother. I sent her a copy of the book, and she texted me after she read it. She said, "Congratulations. I learned things about you I always wanted to know."
That's great.
And I thought, okay, well, I'm right here. But, the phone call works both ways too. But it is fascinating to put this together. Now, your hometown right now in Connecticut is Simsbury.
That's right.
Yeah, and you have two kids, old adult kids. And by the way, it took me a few moments to figure out
I do.
what is YA. I said, what? Oh, young adults. Hello. because you've won an award
Young
with this
adults,
book
yes.
already.
Um, I won a pre-published award where the year before I um, got it, actually, the year I got it accepted, right before I got it accepted, I had submitted my pre-published novel to this contest, the Tassie Walden Awards. It's run by an organization called the Shoreline Arts Alliance
Mm.
on the Connecticut shore. And I was the young adult finalist for 2024, which was really exciting.
Well, first of all,
Um,
congratulations.
thank you.
Want to let you folks know that her website is lorimillerkase.com, LORIMILLERKASE.com. We hope that you will go there and you will check out her book and other things that she's doing as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan here with Lori Case, and we're talking, of course, about her latest release, and that is called The Accident. And I wanted to dive a little bit into your journalistic background, especially in this day and age. I have a real hard time with the criticism today of journalism and journalists because it's lumping everybody into the same category, that they're all out for the same thing. They don't care about the truth. They just want to get, the first, they want to get the breaking story out, scoop everybody else, and so forth. What was your introduction to journalism, and what were maybe the core, I don't know, rules or maxims that you incorporated into your journalism?
Um, okay, I feel like journalism was very different when I started.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I started working for papers when I was in high school and then in college. I worked for the Brown Daily Herald at Brown University, and I also worked for the Providence Journal as a stringer for events that happened at Brown. Um, but I got my real journalism training at the New York Times, where I was a reporter trainee for about 3 years after graduating college. And at that time, um, the the rule of journalism is that you had to be objective. Um, you couldn't take a side unless you were writing an editorial. And so that was always in my mind when I was writing stories. I had to get both sides of the story and not inject my own opinion into it. Um,
Mm.
and I feel like, and also I had to check all my facts, which I did meticulously, because when you're new at journalism, you're petrified that you're going to make a mistake. So I got very careful about checking my facts and making sure that my stories were objective. I feel like now journalism has changed a lot, and um, people do inject their opinions into what they write, um, which isn't always a bad thing, as long as you know what the journalism outlet's perspective is, and you can take that into account when you read or listen to or see the story.
Mm.
Um, but I feel like so many of the publications now are either slanted all the way one way or all the way the other because everyone's so divided now over everything political and environmental and all the issues. Um, and it's hard sometimes to know who to believe.
Mm.
You really have to check your sources even more now than I feel like you did when I was first starting out.
What are your thoughts in regards to especially uh, the aspect of being accused as a journalist of the term fake news? It doesn't matter who says it, the fact that it's being said, I'm sorry, but I guess I'm too trusting. It's not that I believe everything I read. I mean, Abraham Lincoln said of the internet, don't believe everything you read on the internet. But it's like, okay, so where am I supposed to get my information? And I'll also add to that that I'm also concerned about safety on the internet in terms of, well, my wife and I, we were scammed 3 times, but thank God we didn't lose any money over the summer when we were looking for a place to live and also looking for a dog. And we could have lost $3,000 in the process. And it's like, okay, I can't do business on the internet. I'm going to have to talk with people that I know and have them refer me, et cetera, et cetera. Which I know that's a slightly different subject, but the point I'm getting to is the whole aspect of trust. I mean, are journalists really that bad? Or is journalism, I guess I should say, really that bad? And can we come back to true journalism, or is the fourth estate up for sale?
I don't think journalism is bad, and I think that you find the sources that you trust, and often it will depend on your views. I know, without getting into my political views, I know
Mm.
that there are certain news outlets that I trust more than others because they're more aligned with my way of thinking. But what my husband and I do a lot is we'll watch, um, say, CNN, but then we'll switch over to see what Fox News is saying too.
Mhm.
So we get different sides of the same story. And I'll do that when I read things too. I think you
So,
can make your own determinations when you're looking at more than one source of news. I think you have to take in different sources of news and read different people's opinions because I know my mind has changed sometimes, or I recognize certain aspects of a situation that I might not have understood when I read different people's perspectives of a specific issue.
mhm. And certainly, and I remember when I was in junior college back in the late 70s, early 80s, I took a photography, black and white photography class. And I found myself in my neighborhood at an intersection, not a major thoroughfare, but it was a signaled intersection, and there was an accident right in the middle of the street in the intersection. Had my camera with me, so slowly and carefully, without getting in anybody's way, I took pictures of the accident working around the accident. And of course, you know the old saying about, you can interview 10 people about that same accident. You're going to get 10 different descriptions, which hopefully would give you a little bit broader perspective on what happened, just as you're talking about. Well, that's what this program is about, too. We have people on from all different walks of life and so forth. Because we want people to step on that circle and move around the points on that circle, as many as they can, to broaden their perspectives instead of just staying in an echo chamber. That doesn't do anybody any good. So in my case, I don't listen to either side, you know. And the main reason I don't listen to either side is because uh, I've got too many other things that I need to be doing to concern myself with all this stuff. Do I care about what's going on? Sure, I do. I already know, based upon history, about man's inhumanity to man. Why do I need to know that Putin is bombing, I can't remember, Ukraine, or that Israel and the Palestinians are, well, I guess now there's some treaty or what have you, and hostages have been released, et cetera, or whatever other story you want to list. I know that's going on. Why do I need to fill my head with it? I want to be doing programs like this, where we talk about hopefully a little deeper subjects that help people to understand that there's more going on than on the surface. And I'm wondering about your book, The Accident, how deep you go there in terms of because from what I understand, as a journalist, you've got to be pretty detailed in what you're putting down in print, right?
Yes, one way that the journalist in me came out with when I was writing this book is I wanted to make sure that my portrayal of the police investigation into the accident and the legal proceedings that eventually happen in my book were realistic. So I actually interviewed a bunch of experts to make sure that I got that right. I
Mm.
interviewed a judge, and he referred me to a juvenile judge who I interviewed, and I interviewed a police chief, and I interviewed a criminal lawyer. Um, so in that way, I tried to make the book grounded in reality, even though it is a book of fiction.
Mm.
Um, but I did try to dig deep into a lot of different themes while I was writing the book. And, the book is about, it's a story about secrets and lies and how there's a lot of gray area around the concepts of truth and culpability. Um, it's about choices and consequences and how even not doing anything and not saying anything is also making a choice.
Hmm.
Um, I talk about divided loyalties because I think that teens are always dealing with conflicting loyalties, whether between family and friends, or family and a love interest, or friends and a love interest. And I feel like they're also always grappling with moral dilemmas that require difficult decisions, just like the characters in my book. So I tried to make that all as realistic as I could.
We're talking with Miller Kase, and her latest first thriller. It is out as of our conversation, The Accident. And we certainly hope that you will go to her website, which is LoriMillerKase.com. We will be linked to that website so you can find out more about the work that she is doing. Order your copy of The Accident as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. This is a program designed with new paradigms for a new world in mind, giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And Miller Kase, my guest here on the program, author of The Accident. Choices are really the bottom line of everything. Whether it doesn't matter what your career is, what you're doing. I mean, my wife and I, we were served, so to speak, with eviction because the owners of the rental that we were in, they wanted to sell the property. They couldn't do it with tenants on the line because on the property because people that were prospective buyers didn't want to buy with people living there. So we were given notice in June, and we had been looking for 3 months or 2 months, I should say, almost two and a half. And we found this house here up in the mountains above San Bernardino. And I got to tell you, I've had some really interesting days and nights trying to figure out what we're going to do. Obviously, when we found this house, and my wife was the thing she loves about this house is the fact that it has a gas stove. That was her selling point. And okay, well, I'm not opposed to a gas stove because when you turn the heat on, it's on. You don't have to wait for it to warm up like electric. It's a two-story. My wife likes to call it three because we have a loft over the main floor, which is the second floor technically. And we've been living here now for, as of this conversation, um, the first day wasn't living because we were unloading. But we've been here since Monday, the 13th. So, not even 2 days yet. Still a little unnerving. I mean, this is a huge house. I'm curious as to when the bills come due for electricity and gas and so forth. I don't think it'll be that bad. I think I'm making a monkey out of a molehill or whatever. But we made a choice to do this, and we've wanted to do this for a long time. When it comes to choosing stories, now I know that if you're working for what, like a newspaper or some other publication, or even I guess radio or television, you will have an editor in chief that will tell you what story you're going to do. Have you been primarily freelance where you find something that what interests you or that's going on? How does that process for you work?
Okay, well, it worked differently in different parts of my journey. But when I
Hmm.
was at the New York Times, as a reporter trainee, I worked on different departments at the Times. For the last year, I was on the foreign desk, doing more support sort of things like writing summaries of the day's stories for the top editors and things like that. And then in my hours off, I would be writing and reporting stories for other sections of the paper, except for 1 month when I was actually reporting for the Metropolitan desk. We all got a chance to do that. Um, so mostly that was me coming up with my own stories. I worked for a little while at Vogue magazine as a health and fitness editor. So um, that was me coming up with my own stories a lot of the time, and sometimes the top health editor would be assigning me stories. But then as a freelancer, it was usually me coming up with my own stories. Once in a while, when I was working for with an editor for a long time at a particular publication, they might ask me to do a certain story. Um, so the way that I would come up with stories varied. Uh, there were certain topics that I was interested in. I always love writing about medical ethics and issues, particularly with. I was very interested in any topic that had to do with medical ethics. I specialized in health for a long time. When I was at the Times, I wrote about all different things, but I always thought I was going to just go into writing about the arts and culture. I loved working for the book review when I was at the Times, and I did do a lot of pieces on arts and culture when I was there. But my husband was in medical school at the time, so I started to get some ideas that were related to um, medicine and medical education. Um, and actually, while I was at the Times, I had a front page story. It was during the AIDS crisis when I was at the Times, and I had a front page story on home testing for AIDS. The way that I got that idea, crazily enough, was that my husband was a big Howard Stern fan, and it was on in our car, and I heard him say something about a mail-in testing for AIDS, and I thought, wow, that sounds interesting. I'd never heard of that before. So I started delving into it and found out that there were um, there were several companies working on that, and it was a thing. And I started reporting it and did the story. Um, Sometimes I'll just see things out in the world that I want to write about, or I'll see trends in something having to do with the arts, or um, I mean, I have all different I have all different ways that I come up with stories, but there might be a topic that I'm interested in knowing more about. It's usually I'm interested in knowing more about a certain thing, whether it's something having to do with health or, um, I used to write for a lot for this local magazine here called Seasons, um, and I loved doing stories that looked at cultural things around the area. So I did a story once on literary landmarks and just kind of, there's a lot of writers who live up in this area of Connecticut. Um, and there are a lot of literary landmarks like Mark Twain's house and the Harriet Beecher Stowe house and the real life town that uh, the the Witch at Blackbird Pond was based on. And um, I started noticing a lot of mural art at one point, so I did a piece on uh, mural art all around my area of Connecticut. Um, there's really good theaters that start some of the shows that then go on to Broadway. Um, I did a piece, called Off, Off, Off Broadway about all the great theaters in the area. Um, I'm all over the place, whatever I'm interested in at a certain point. When I had little kids, I started specializing in parenting. I wrote a ton of articles for Parents Magazine, and I had a column in Parenting Magazine, which no longer exists. So I pretty much, at different stages of my life, I'm writing about things that interest me at that stage of life.
And that sort of makes a story almost write itself because you're interested in it, because you are going to find things that maybe you didn't know. It's like, wow, okay, well, let's put that in there and let's put that in there and so forth. And I find that interesting that I mean, for me, for example, I have had a wide variety of people of different philosophies, if and one interview that I did tell the listening audience what the philosophy was. because I knew that the moment that I mentioned what their belief system was, the name, people were going to tune out because of the connotation. But I felt it was important to talk about it. And I've had atheists, Scientologists, I've had Catholics, and I've had born agains, and I've had metaphysicians, and I've had spiritualists, and the list goes on. And I've also had programs where we talked about a little bit less depth, not so philosophical, because sometimes it's important to to go through the process of you know being aware of what's happening. And I don't get into necessarily current events, although I might mention in a generic term someone who is there and who is doing this, that, or the other thing. We did a program where I was interviewing a gentleman who was talking. He wrote a book about narcissists and psychopaths. And what was so fascinating, probably the most important, most interesting thing for me in that interview was when he said, "Yes, we can learn from narcissists, and even though their mode of achieving things is the means justify the ends, they get things done. You may not like how they get them done, but they do
Right.
get things done." It's like, okay, all right, I can appreciate that, and I will certainly keep that in mind next time I encounter someone in that particular genre. But it's important that we. I mean, what was there was a phrase when I was growing up where the parents might say words to the effect, go read a book or go to the library and broaden your horizons. They didn't tell us what to read, and so forth. And to me, it's just fascinating. The, the 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 possibilities are endless in terms of the information that you can gather. And I think what you're doing, what you have done as a journalist, has, I think, probably helped a lot of people, to broaden their horizons. Have you ever
I
had
hope
any?
so.
Go ahead, please.
Oh, I was just going to say, this idea of you speaking to the different philosophers, I find it very interesting because sometimes you can't, if you don't really know enough about a certain religion or philosophy or way of thinking, it's interesting to hear someone who believes in that thing kind of explain their thought process behind it. And um, I think that by listening to different points of view and also by reading anything, um, you get kind of an insight into how people think. And as a writer, I'm trying to create characters who seem realistic and trying to let people see how the characters think. And I think because every writer sort of brings themselves into what they write, and some of how I think probably filters its way into my characters as well as the way that people I know think. Um, and I think that reading any kinds of books, whether fiction or nonfiction, almost especially fiction, really, makes people more empathetic because you kind of get an idea of how other people think,
Hmm.
if the author effectively conveys that. Um, and I read, voraciously as a kid, and I think that was one thing I loved about reading is I just got to see, you know, how other people thought,
Hmm.
and sometimes found, books where people thought in ways similar that I did or worried about the same things I did, and there was some comfort in that. I felt like, the author got me in some way.
Exactly, exactly. And it's to me also interesting to. I mean, I've shared on this program in terms of my process. Now, I'm a curious individual. I've been blessed with a very curious mind, similar to you. The difference for me when I'm doing these programs is, though I have that curious mind, I phrase it this way, that the universe asks the questions. I'm just along for the ride. And I trust my intuition. I had an interview. I was talking with this one woman. This question just would not go away. I kept saying inside, go away. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about. It wouldn't go away. So I didn't actually stop the interview, but I had to stop and I said, hey, I've got a question that won't go away. So I asked it and we went off in a different direction, but it did fit in, despite my misgivings. So that's why I am always encouraging people to listen to that still small voice or that gut feeling. Does that work for you? Has that served you well in your career and your pursuits?
I think so, yes. I mean, people who become journalists, I would think like to learn things. I loved school. I loved going back to school for creative writing, and I love journalism because you just get to learn about all these different things. I mean, there's so many there's like whole niche worlds in every little topic that I would write about. It's like there's a whole world about that topic that I knew nothing about. And by interviewing different people in that world and observing what they do, all of a sudden I'm learning this whole new thing. Um, I'm veering away from your question. Can you
No,
repeat that question you just asked me?
just having to do with trusting your intuition in your job, in the
Oh,
work
yes,
that you do.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, yeah, I mean, I would usually, prepare before every interview, writing out a whole bunch of questions I wanted to ask the person. But um, definitely while you're talking to somebody, just other questions pop into your head, things that you need to ask or you feel need to be answered in order to complete the story or to get a full picture.
Mm.
Um, I always found it very hard to write a story. I tended to over-report my stories. I would interview way too many people, and take really a long time with the reporting before I would ever get around to writing the story. And but I felt like I couldn't write the story until I had a full picture and a full under, especially when I was writing things about health and medical things, and I wanted to make sure it was accurate and I was getting across the the correct information. Um, I would need to understand, the whole story before I could start writing. So I would trust my intuition in terms of just follow all those, just follow my curiosity, basically, and
Yeah.
ask all the questions about everything I wanted to know.
That's a key because now you mentioned Howard Stern. I grew up and I worked for a radio station that carried the Larry King show on Mutual Radio. And I this is the way I phrase it, that I went to the Larry King School of Broadcasting because I incorporated one of the aspects of his style. Now, back then, he took phone calls from the listeners, and he would say he didn't prepare. He might see the book and that kind of thing, but it wasn't something that I've worked with people who have been hosts for shows, and they'll come in an hour or two before the program with a pile of papers, and they go through and go through and go through, and then they get on the program, and it's like, it doesn't sound so natural, come on. And then after the program, I had one gal, she would call the guest to ask them how she did. And I thought, all right, fine. I guess you need that level of approval. Um, my wife gets a little frustrated with me when after an interview, she says, what'd you talk about? I said, I don't remember. You'll have to go online and listen to the interview because, it's not that I don't care. It's just that okay, it's on tape or it's digital, whatever, it's recorded. And I need to move on. Now, some information will come back during certain interviews. Like, for example, you mentioned Howard Stern. Now, when I was growing up, I was starting to hear him. I hated his style. However, when I got into the business, I had the utmost respect for the man because he did what no one else was doing, and he pushed the envelope when it came to the FCC. And then when the internet came along or satellite radio, it didn't matter anymore. He could say and do whatever he wanted. But the
Right.
thing was, he did push the envelope, and for that he has my undying respect. Uh, I also loved what has been said in regards to, for example, the First Amendment in terms of freedom of speech. And then you have the FCC telling you there are certain words you cannot say. And it's like, well, wait a minute. How is it that nobody has, or maybe they have, and I'm not aware of it, they haven't challenged the FCC on the violating of the First Amendment? If you don't like what you're listening to or watching, there's a channel changer and there's an on-off switch or knob. I don't understand that. That's probably the one thing that really perplexes me more than anything else. I'm not going to sit here and start, dropping F-bombs or anything of that nature. That's not my style. It's not to say that I don't do. Well, let me tell you something. When we were packing and when we were moving and offloading and unloading, oh yeah, there were a few. No, more than a few, but fortunately it wasn't on the radio. But what are your thoughts about that in terms of this discussion about the freedom of speech in terms of the broadcast media? I mean, the founding fathers, of course, didn't have broadcast media, and obviously times have changed.
I mean, I'm a big proponent of freedom of speech, and for me, it's particularly my particular focus with freedom of speech is everything that's going on right now with book banning,
Mm,
which is in broadcast media, but um, I am very troubled by all these amazing books that are being challenged or being banned. Um, because, like you said, just like someone can change the channel, they don't have to pick up the book
hmm
either. Um,
By the way,
and I think,
did you know what was the first book on Kindle? Do you know what the first book banned and removed from their library was?
no,
A real irony. The book was Fahrenheit 451. Can you
was
believe
it?
that? Yeah.
I knew that book was challenged because I was recently in a local bookstore where I'm actually having a book event tonight, and they had a whole display of banned and challenged books, and that one was in there,
Wow.
and that
Wow.
was a great book.
And forgive me for using this terminology here, still appropriate for the FCC, but how is it that people do not see the comparison in this specific area with Nazi Germany in the 30s and 40s? How is it that people are not seeing that? Am I wrong?
Wait, are you talking which thing are you talking about now?
Book burning.
With
Book banning
oh
is
yeah,
the
yeah,
same thing as book burning. You might as well
yeah.
burn the books. And I've seen some video on YouTube where they're actually in the 21st century burning the books.
I know that's crazy to me.
Yeah.
Um, it's horrible. I
Yeah.
mean,
I was incensed. I remember in high school, was it Southwest literature class? One of the books that we were asked to read was Mark Twain's Tom Sawyer, Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer, right? And then, I don't know, maybe it was a decade or so ago, I started hearing about how they were reprinting it, but they were changing the words. And I thought, but that was the way they spoke back then. And that's when he was writing in that era. I mean, okay, so I would like to take the Bible. Oh, this would be highly offensive. And there are certain words I'd like to have removed because they are offensive to me. Now, they're not. You write whatever you want. I may or may not read it. That's the bottom line. I don't want to do that. But I mean, that's kind of that's where we are right now. And it's really kind of sad. I mean, how would you feel if one of your articles or even this book that you've written, The Accident, which we're talking about here on the program as well, encouraging people to get a copy of at lauramillercase.com. How would you feel if someone read your book and said, no, we got to change some of the words? Now, an editor, that's one thing, but the general public or a librarian, etc.
well, it's hard enough when an editor does it. Um, but of course, you don't want people messing around with your words. Um, and I agree. These books were written at a certain time, and the language was used in that time. And if some people find it offensive, they don't need to read it.
That's right.
But I don't think that that means we should change it.
No, I agree.
And I feel, and yeah, And I feel like it's the same, it's a similar issue, whether it's book banning or whether it's banning certain things from being said on broadcast media.
Yeah.
Um,
Of course, I
I
would
think
say
people
that,
should.
yeah, not as big a deal because you now have the internet as well as satellite radio. And, you want to say those kinds of things, you've got the platform. It's not that hard to do. We're talking with Lori Miller Kase. Her book is called The Accident. Go to lorimillercase.com. We will be linked to that website as we continue here on the program that brings you new paradigms for a new world. We're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. This is Tell Me Your Story. We want to thank our very special guest, Lori Miller Kase, for being with us. It's been a pleasure to talk with you, and I wish you much success with your book. I'm curious as to whether anybody has read it prior, because I had my sister read mine. She's a proofreader, and she sent it back with a lot of corrections, which I appreciated. I'm not upset with her at all for the corrections that she made, or suggested, I should say. But
Yes.
I'm wondering if anybody has said, this might make a good, maybe a screenplay could be made out of this for something on TV or a movie. What are your thoughts in that regard? Is that
A lot of people have said that to me. My nephew, who is a very talented filmmaker, actually made me a book trailer, which you can see on my website. And people who watch that book trailer have all said this could definitely be a movie or a TV show. Um, but a lot of people read the book. Well, not a lot of people, but people read parts of the book as I was going along, all the way through the process. I've been in writing classes. I'm in several different writing groups. I'm and writing workshops, and pages at a time. I got feedback from the people in my different groups and my classes, telling me what things needed to be clarified. If they thought there was a relationship that needed to be deepened, or um, all kinds of feedback that I incorporated into the book. When the book was done, I did have a group of beta readers, some of my friends and my daughter actually, who gave me one of the biggest compliments that I've gotten, because she said to me one day, I was thinking of this thing that happened the other day, and I couldn't remember if it happened in real life or if it happened in your book. And that made me feel really good. Um, but
that means it made quite an
but yeah,
impact?
so some people read it. Yeah, that made me feel really good. But yeah, so some people read it, and um, some just pointed out some typos, and other people pointed out, other things that I might want to clarify. But um, no one, just only a couple people have seen it in its very final form so far.
Mm.
Just a few. But
Well,
now it's out there.
yeah,
Now it's out there,
absolutely.
so more people will be seeing it.
Well, we wish you much success with the book and whatever future endeavors will spin off from that. And we thank you so much for being a part of the work we're doing here, because the things we've talked about today, I think, are important for people to consider. Think about it. I mean, there are so many things going on right now in this world, let alone this country, that are contradictory. They don't make any sense. It's like, okay, on the one hand, we have this that's what we're supposed to be living by. And then we have, on the other hand, someone saying, this is what we're going to do, which seems like a heck of a dichotomy. And I think
I totally agree.
these kinds of conversations are important. And I thank you so much for being a part of the work that we're doing here, as I put it, to try to change the world.
Well, thank you for having me. I enjoyed talking to
Absolutely.
you.
I do have three final questions that I ask all of my guests. Before I do, I want to thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story. New paradigms for a new world, where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We're here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., streaming live at, by the way, we're here Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., streaming live at AM 1290, KZSB.com. And richarddugan.com. And we are on YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. Our podcasts are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and many other locations across the internet. And as said, we're on YouTube where you can watch these conversations, and I hope you will subscribe as well as click notification. We'll hope you'll go to Amazon to pick up a copy of my book, Choices, 5 Steps for Life. It is available in hardcover, paperback, and Kindle. And we also hope that you will leave us a tip. Yeah, we have a tip jar, believe it or not. And that tip jar is called PayPal. And so there are links on the homepage of richarddugan.com if you'd like to help us out financially in any way, shape, or form. To both YouTube as well as to Amazon. They're on the homepage of richarddugan.com. And finally, please take the time to go within during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, and listen to that still small voice. That's how I wound up in this 2-story, or as my wife likes to say, 3-story house. It didn't necessarily go as smoothly as we would have liked it, but it happened. And one of my dear friends, basically, and when I was sharing the story with her as we went through it, she says, do you know that at the beginning I was going to say to you, you're crazy. There's no way, absolutely, you should give it up. But as I watched you, as you shared with me, as the progress continued, I was utterly dumbfounded and congratulatory. I thought, man, you did it. You found something. And it's real exciting. So that's why we listen to that still small voice. With all that being said, we now move to our final 3 questions for a very special guest. And the first of those 3 questions is, who is Lori Miller Kase?
I am a writer. I've always wanted to write. I have many stories in me. I have many books in me. I have several books on the side that hopefully will see the light of day, and I'm working on more novels. Um, I'm also a mother of 2 great kids. I'm very into my family. I um, I love to garden. I love to read. Um, I love to just learn about different people.
What gets you up in the morning?
Actually, my dog gets me up in the morning very early.
Mhm.
Um, but the promise of that first cup of coffee, I'm a major coffee addict. Um, and just I just have a lot of fun with things in life. I like to get up and know I'm going to write that day. I'm going to see my friends. I'm going to work on all the business things I have to do now that I have a book out in the world. Um, uh, See the people I like to see, and um, go on to the next adventure.
Mm.
Love to travel. Um, yeah, I just, you know, like to, I just like to get up and do all the things.
Wonderful. A final question. What was your
Mm,
best day?
my best day. Well, I've had a lot of best days. Um, I've had a lot of best days. I'd say 2 of the best days were the births of my 2 children. Um, my wedding was one of my best days. Um, Getting the offer for this book to be published was one of my best days. Um, a lot of best days.
Mm. Wonderful. Wonderful. Absolutely. Well, once again, thank you, Lori, for being with us here on the program on Tell Me Your Story. And thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to all. Jeanette, I'm still listening. Dad, continue to be happy because I am. Smokey, I'll see you on the other side. Mike, thanks for letting me be in your life and you being in mine. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.